You don't plan the day a sandwich changes your life. It just finds you, usually when you're soaked and out of excuses. The best friendships, I've learned, don't always start with introductions and small talk. Sometimes they begin with a stranger offering you half their sandwich while you're both trying not to freeze to death. I'm Sophie, and on that Cedar Rapids Tuesday, I was one bus, one coffee spill, and one rent hike past my limit. It was the kind of November day this city specializes in, the kind that made you question your life choices. Specifically, the choice to live anywhere that required you to own multiple types of winter coats. The rain wasn't just falling, it was attacking, coming at you sideways with a personal vendetta. I ducked into Franklin Library not because I needed a book, but because it was the closest building with a door when the sky decided to empty its entire contents on downtown. My jacket was doing that thing where it pretended to be waterproof right up until you actually needed it to repel water. I stood in the entrance, dripping like a human faucet, creating a small lake on the library's welcome mat. The sudden quiet of the library was almost a shock after the roar of the wind outside. The air inside smelled of old paper, floor polish, and the faint, promising scent of wood smoke drifting from somewhere deeper within. The security guard, his name tag said Walter, looked at me with the kind of sympathy reserved for wet cats and people who'd clearly lost a fight with the weather. "Reading room's got a fireplace," he said, pointing down the hall. "Real wood, not one of those fake electric things. Margaret keeps it going on days like this." I almost said I was fine, that I'd just wait out the worst of it and head home. But my teeth were doing that chattering thing that made it hard to lie convincingly. And Walter had already turned back to his newspaper, decision made. Sometimes the universe puts people in your path who won't let you be politely miserable. I squelched my way in the direction he'd indicated, leaving a trail of water droplets like breadcrumbs in a very wet fairy tale. My shoes made that embarrassing squish-squash sound with every step, announcing my arrival to everyone trying to read in peace. A teenager looked up from his laptop and winced in sympathy. A mother quickly moved her toddler's picture books away from my drip radius. The reading room was exactly what you'd hope to find in an old library: dark wood paneling, leather chairs that had seen better decades, and shelves reaching toward the ceiling like they were trying to hold up the sky. And there, crackling away in defiance of the modern world, was an honest-to-goodness fireplace, with actual flames doing their ancient dance. I wasn't the only refugee from the storm. A woman sat in one of the chairs closest to the fire, surrounded by what looked like the entire biography section. She had silver hair pulled back in a bun that was slowly losing its battle with gravity, and she was wearing at least 3 cardigans layered on top of each other. When she looked up at me standing there, dripping and pathetic, her face crinkled into the kind of smile that made you instantly feel less stupid about your life choices. "Well, don't just stand there creating puddles," she said, her voice carrying that particular blend of authority and warmth that reminded me of my 3rd-grade teacher. "Pull up a chair before you catch your death. These old bones didn't survive 76 winters just to watch young people freeze out of politeness." I grabbed the chair next to hers, trying not to drip on her impressive book fortress. Up close, I could see she was reading multiple biographies simultaneously: Eleanor Roosevelt, Julia Child, and someone named Temple Grandin, with sticky notes poking out like colorful hedgehog quills. "Research project?" I asked, gesturing at her literary construction. She laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Oh heavens, no. I'm too old for assignments and deadlines. I just like reading about women who didn't let the world tell them what they couldn't do. Gives me ideas." She marked her place in the Eleanor book with what appeared to be a grocery receipt. "I'm Beatrice, by the way. B to anyone who doesn't want to waste syllables." "I'm Sophie," I said, still shivering despite the fire's best efforts. "And I'm pretty sure I'm creating a pond in this very nice chair." "Nonsense! These chairs have survived worse than a little rainwater. Back in '93, someone spilled an entire thermos of tomato soup on that one you're sitting in. Still smells like Campbell's when it gets humid enough." I shifted, suddenly very aware of my chair's potential aromatherapy properties. B rummaged in a bag that seemed to materialize from nowhere. One of those Mary Poppins situations where the bag looked too small to hold a wallet, but somehow contained half a pharmacy and possibly a small kitchen. She pulled out a thermos and 2 slightly squashed sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. The crinkle of the paper was a small, comforting sound in the quiet room. She unwrapped one and handed it to me without asking if I wanted it. "Turkey and Swiss," she announced, pressing it into my hands like a settled matter. "Made 2 this morning because I had a feeling. My feelings are usually right. Once, I had a feeling I should bring an umbrella to my nephew's outdoor wedding, even though there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Saved the wedding cake, I did." The sandwich was perfect in that homemade way. Real turkey, not the processed stuff. Swiss cheese that actually tasted like something. And a mysterious spread that might have been mayo mixed with, was that herbs? Whatever it was, it tasted like care and attention. 2 ingredients notably absent from my usual lunch of whatever the vending machine at work hadn't run out of. "So, Sophie," B said, pouring tea from her thermos into 2 cups she'd also produced from her magical bag. "What has you running around in this biblical flood without proper rain gear, besides poor planning, which happens to the best of us?" I found myself telling her about my morning. The job interview that had gone sideways when I'd knocked over the interviewer's coffee, onto his keyboard no less, the bus that had sailed past my stop without slowing, the text from my landlord about the rent increase that would definitely mean finding a new place. By the time I got to the part where my umbrella had turned inside out and flown away like a wayward bat, B was laughing so hard she had to put down her tea. "Oh, honey," she wheezed, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief that had violets embroidered on it. "Some days the universe just decides to use you for target practice. But you know what? Those are usually the days when something shifts. The bad days crack you open so the good stuff can find a way in." The worst part about the interview wasn't even the coffee incident, though watching a 60-year-old man try to save his computer while maintaining professional composure would haunt me for weeks. It was the moment right before when he'd asked why I wanted to work with seniors in technology, and I'd frozen. The real answer, because my grandmother had died last year without ever learning to video call, and I'd missed saying goodbye because I was 3 states away, had lodged in my throat like a stone. Instead, I'd mumbled something about bridging the digital divide that sounded like I'd copied it from a grant proposal. In a room full of answers, I'd left my truth in the hallway. It's amazing how loud silence can be when it's your own. "You know what your problem is?" B said, studying me with those sharp blue eyes that seemed to see straight through to my spine. "You're trying to give the answers you think people want instead of the truth that actually matters. Trust me, after 42 years of listening to teenagers try to explain why they didn't do their homework, I can spot authentic from artificial at 50 paces." Her words didn't sting. They landed. She had x-rayed my entire professional life in a single sentence, and the relief of being so truly seen was staggering. She returned to her books, but not in a way that shut me out. Instead, she started reading bits aloud, sharing passages about Eleanor's terrible mother-in-law, Julia's disastrous first cooking attempts, Temple's revolutionary work with animals. Every so often, she'd look up and add her own commentary, like a one-woman book club who'd forgotten to send out invitations. "See, that's the thing," she said, waving her sandwich for emphasis. "Every single one of these women had days where everything went wrong, spectacularly wrong, but they didn't let the wrong days define their story. They just, kept going." The fire crackled and popped, sending up little sparks like punctuation marks. Outside, the rain continued its assault on the windows, but in here, in this bubble of warmth and words, it felt like we'd found a secret pocket of peace in the chaos. "I used to be a teacher," B continued, settling deeper into her chair. 42 years of 7th graders, which is either a calling or a form of insanity, depending on who you ask. Retired last year, and everyone kept asking what I was going to do with myself, as if I hadn't been waiting 4 decades to read whatever I wanted whenever I wanted, without having to grade papers about what courage means to a 13-year-old. She pulled out a pair of reading glasses from cardigan number 2 and perched them on her nose. You want to know what courage means? It means showing up, day after day, even when you'd rather hide under your covers. It means Adrian Hoffman coming to school the day after his father left. It means Samantha Chen giving her presentation with a stutter she was sure everyone would mock. It means me walking into that classroom the Monday after Harold's funeral because those kids needed someone to show them that life keeps going, even when your heart is broken into so many pieces you can hear them rattle when you walk. She paused, looking at the fire. Lost my Harold 2 years before I retired. Heart attack in the garden, doing what he loved. I found him next to the tomatoes he'd been so proud of. Still can't eat tomatoes without crying, which is inconvenient given how many recipes require them. The fireplace crackled, filling the silence. I watched the flames dance and thought about my grandmother, about all the video calls we never made, all the stories I never recorded. Tell me about her, Bea said quietly, and I realized I'd been thinking out loud. So I did. I told her about Grandma Rose, who made the world's best apple pie but never wrote down the recipe because cooking is about feeling, not measuring. About how she'd lived alone for 15 years after Grandpa died, proud and stubborn and insisting she didn't need any of that computer nonsense. About the stroke that took her voice first, then everything else, while I sat in my Seattle apartment refreshing flight websites, trying to find a ticket I could afford. I didn't miss a flight. I missed a goodbye. And now every class I want to teach is really a promise to someone else's Rose. Technology is the tool, connection is the point. The bridge only matters because of who's waiting on the other side. I didn't know what to say, but Bea didn't seem to need me to say anything. She just continued, her voice steady. The first year was it was what you'd expect. I moved through the days like I was underwater. Everything muffled and slow. But then one morning I woke up and realized I had a choice. I could keep living underwater or I could learn to breathe again. Different air than before, but still air. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Her fingers were warm from holding her tea, soft with age but strong with purpose. That's why you really want this job, isn't it? Not for the digital divide or the nonprofit mission statement or whatever buzzwords they're using these days. You want it because you understand what it means to have technology be a bridge you can't cross when it matters most. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Outside, thunder rumbled like the sky was rearranging furniture. She gestured around the reading room. So I come here, 3 days a week, rain or shine. I read about remarkable women, I share sandwiches with storm refugees, and I remember that life is still happening, even when it happens differently than you planned. She pulled out a small notebook from cardigan number 3. Honestly, the woman was like a walking office supply store, and started writing. Here's what you're going to tell Patricia tomorrow. You're going to tell her about Rose. You're going to tell her about that flight website. You're going to tell her that you understand technology isn't about the devices. It's about connection. And if she has any sense, which she does because we've been friends since Nixon was president, she'll hire you on the spot. She tore out the page and handed it to me. In handwriting that belonged on wedding invitations, she'd written, Questions for Patricia. 1. How many seniors in your program have family out of state? 2. What percentage know how to video call? 3. What would it mean to them to see their grandchildren's faces whenever they wanted? These aren't just questions, she continued. They're your mission statement. And trust me, Patricia appreciates someone who thinks beyond the job description. A log shifted in the fireplace, sending up a shower of sparks. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that usually takes years to develop but sometimes arrives fully formed, a gift from the universe on days when you need it most. What kind of job was the interview for? Bea asked eventually. Marketing coordinator at a nonprofit, I said. They help seniors learn technology. I thought it would be meaningful, better than selling insurance or, I don't know, optimizing click-through rates for online ads. B's eyes lit up. The senior center downtown? With the computer classes? I nodded, surprised. You know it? Know it. I've been trying to convince them to expand their program for months. Too many of my friends are terrified of their grandchildren's iPads. Although, she added with a grin, after you baptize the interviewer's computer with coffee, you might need a different approach. She pulled out her phone. A surprisingly new model for someone who'd just been reading about women from the last century. I'm texting my friend Patricia. She's on the senior center's board and hates stuffy interviews. Believes in what she calls real-world assessment. B, you don't have to... Nonsense. This is what happens when you accept a sandwich from a stranger. You get adopted. It's in the fine print. Benefits include tea refills, unsolicited life advice, and Thursdays. Her fingers flew across the phone screen with surprising speed. There, Patricia says she'll meet you for coffee tomorrow. You can handle coffee around her, can't you? And see if you're a good fit. Less formal, more human. I stared at her, this magical library woman who'd appeared with sandwiches and solutions. Why would you do this for someone you just met? B looked at me over her reading glasses, which had slipped down during her texting frenzy. Because 42 years of teaching taught me to recognize potential when I see it. And because Harold always said the best way to honor the help you've received is to pass it along. And because you looked exactly like I felt 2 years ago, lost in the rain. The afternoon wore on, and our conversation meandered like a lazy river. B told me about her grandchildren in Portland, who FaceTimed her every Sunday, about the salsa dancing class she'd started taking. My hips complain, but my heart doesn't care. About the novel she was secretly writing. Romance, because at my age I can write what I damn well please. I told her about my mom back in Des Moines, who sent care packages filled with my childhood favorites, about my ex who'd left for a job in Seattle taking my confidence with him, about the dream I had of someday running programs that connected generations through storytelling. Now that, B said, pointing her teacup at me, is a dream worth chasing, although you might want to practice your beverage handling skills first. When the rain finally started to ease up around 4 o'clock, neither of us seemed in a hurry to leave. The fire had died down to glowing embers, and the reading room had that late afternoon quality where time seems to move like honey. Same time Thursday? B asked as we started packing up. I'll bring extra sandwiches. Ham and brie this time, I think. And maybe some of those cookies from the bakery on 3rd Street, the ones that taste like childhood and butter had a baby. You're assuming I'll get caught in the rain again? Oh, honey, I'm not assuming anything, but this is Iowa in November. If it's not raining, it'll be snowing, and if it's not snowing, it'll be doing that awful freezing mist thing that can't make up its mind. Besides, she added, securing her multiple cardigans with a truly impressive scarf, I have a feeling about you, and I told you my feelings are usually right. That was 6 months ago. I got the job at the senior center. Patricia turned out to be even more formidable than B, and significantly less interested in my coffee handling abilities than in my ideas for intergenerational programs. The interview was more like a conversation between friends, and by the end, we were sketching out plans on napkins. When I told her about Grandma Rose, she'd gotten very quiet, then said, "We have 43 members who haven't seen their grandchildren in over a year. Fix that." The first class I taught was video calls for beginners. The room was filled with nervous energy and the gentle tapping of fingers on unfamiliar screens. B sat in the front row, pretending she needed help while actually assisting the gentleman next to her who was holding his tablet upside down. The first half hour was a mess of muted microphones and reversed cameras, but then a breakthrough. A tiny pixelated face popped up on Margaret Sullivan's screen. Is that my Ellie?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Across the room, a cheer went up as Robert Chen's grandson appeared, live from California, to teach him his first Korean phrase. The room transformed from a quiet classroom into a hub of joyous, chaotic connection. Looking at their faces, the tears, the laughter, the sheer wonder, I saw my grandmother. I saw the call we never had. I had to excuse myself to the bathroom to cry for 5 minutes, but for the first time in a year, they were entirely happy tears. Screens stopped being gadgets and turned into little bridges with faces on the other side. Bai and I meet every Thursday, rain or shine. Our reading room sessions have become something of a legend at the library. Walter saves our chairs, and Margaret the librarian keeps the fire going extra long on our days. He pretends it's policy. It's not. It's Walter. Sometimes it's just the two of us sharing sandwiches and book passages. Sometimes we're joined by others. Jenny, who's going through a divorce and needed somewhere to cry that wasn't her lawyer's office. Marcus, a college kid who reminds Bea of her grandson and needs reminding to eat actual food. Eleanor, yes, really, who's 92 and insists on reading us poetry she's written about her late husband. The group has become something none of us expected. A chosen family that gathers around books and sandwiches and the kind of honest conversation that's harder to find than a working umbrella in a rainstorm. Bea calls us the Thursday people, and Walter has started putting a little sign on our chairs. Reserved for storm refugees and other remarkable humans. Sometimes there's a new name on a sticky note. Sometimes it's a story title. Last month, Bea finally let me read the first chapter of her novel. It's about a retired teacher who solves mysteries in her small town, using her knowledge of 7th grade psychology to crack cases. It's funny and sharp and full of heart, just like her. "You know what the best part is?" she said last Thursday, as we sat watching the first spring rain through the reading room windows. "I spent so long thinking my story was over when Harold died. Turns out it was just the end of a chapter. The next one started the day I decided to bring extra sandwiches to the library." She was working on chapter 12 of her mystery novel. The retired teacher had just discovered the mayor's secret cookie smuggling ring, which was somehow connected to the missing library funds. It was ridiculous and wonderful, and publishers were already interested. "Harold would have loved this," she said, adjusting her reading glasses. "He always said I should write down all my stories. Took me 76 years to listen, but better late than never, right?" She's teaching me to make her turkey sandwiches. The secret is a little mustard and with the mayo, and herbs from her kitchen window garden. I've started carrying an extra in my bag, just in case. You never know when you'll meet someone who needs a sandwich and a story, someone standing in the doorway, dripping rain and looking lost. Last week, on a Thursday that started with a sideways rain that felt oddly familiar, it happened. A woman about my age stood in the reading room entrance, soaked through and shaking. She'd just come from the hospital where her mother was in the ICU, hadn't eaten in 12 hours, didn't know where else to go. I gave her my chair by the fire and my extra sandwich. Bea appeared as if summoned, with tea and that magical bag of endless supplies. We didn't tell her everything would be okay. We weren't in the business of lying. Instead, we told her about terrible days that led to beautiful friendships, about choosing to breathe different air, about the way forward being through. When she left 3 hours later, she had our phone numbers and a standing invitation to Thursday Sandwich Club. "See," Bea said after the woman left, "the universe knows what it's doing, even when it seems like it's just pelting you with rain." Because Bea was right about those feelings of hers. The bad days do crack you open. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, what finds its way in is a friend with a thermos of tea, a talent for texting, and a firm belief that the best stories are the ones we write together. Walter still sets out 2 chairs by the fire on Thursdays before we arrive. Some days they're full, some days they're waiting. Either way, the room feels like it's holding its breath for a new name to add to the sign. I can't plan the day a sandwich will change someone else's life, so I just bring an extra. The reading room still smells like wood smoke and old leather and, if Bea's right, occasionally like tomato soup. But mostly it smells like possibility. like the particular magic that happens when strangers decide to become friends, when sandwiches become invitations, when rainy days become the beginning of something beautiful. And every Thursday, rain or shine, we add another page to the story.